Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. I recently added this photograph to my collection, and it reminded me of all of the soldiers that are written about from the Civil War period. The ones that get the ink or get the digital ink are those who perform the heroic actions in battle, made the ultimate sacrifice for a country, uh, or performed some other action, carried a battle flag, captured a battle flag, lived long enough after the war to tell their stories. Those are the ones that command our attention. And it's fitting that we should remember them and continue to tell those stories. But this photograph reminds me about all of those men, and there are an enormous number of them who are among the forgotten. These are the men who quietly toiled in the ranks. They maybe didn't participate in any way that gained recognition in a battle, maybe unseen by their officer, but did great things. Those guys who got sick, went to the hospital, and succumbed to a disease far away from home, maybe surrounded by comrades, maybe a nurse in the hospital, their names all but lost and all but forgotten. It's the majority, it's a large number of men. And again, this photograph reminds me, and in some ways is representative of all of those individuals who perished, names that are now lost to us. And so I want to remember this man today in this episode. He is John Hall. Um, not very much is known about him. He was a regular. And the regulars, if you're a researcher, you know that the regulars are pretty difficult to research compared to volunteers. Volunteer soldiers had better record keeping compared to the regular folks. So this is one of those cases where not only is John Hall, his story is forgotten, his records are so minimal. But I was able to find some information about him, and I want to share it with you. Prior to his enlistment, he was a clerk in Circleville, Ohio. It's a town located about 30 miles south of Columbus. He enlisted January 22nd of 1862, and he was 20 years old when he enlisted. Blue eyes, dark hair, dark complexion, 5'6", fairly average height for maybe even slightly taller for a soldier of that period in time. He enlisted as a private in Company E, 1st Battalion, 19th U.S. Infantry. The 19th participated mostly in the Western Theater, and Hall would have been in the ranks and was in the ranks for the battles of Shiloh and Stones River, among other operations. But at some point, he fell ill with typhoid, wound up being sent to a hospital in Nashville. Actually, it was hospital number 12. And there he died of typhoid on August 27th, 1863. His remains were buried nearby and at some point moved to the Nashville National Cemetery, where you can find him today in Section D, Site 3130. On the back of this photograph, his name, his regiment, his hospital location is all recorded in pen, as well as his death date, August 27th. In the upper right-hand corner of the photograph is a date of August 28th, 1863. So this photograph, whoever inscribed it, it wasn't John Hall because he died on August 27th. Someone, it might have been the nurse, it might have been one of his comrades, it might have been a hospital attendant, a steward who was collecting his possessions and cataloging them to be sent home to his family in Ohio. Don't know who wrote it. I don't know who inscribed it, but they wrote the date August 28th of 1863. So a day after his bed was cleared out and his remains were interred, someone took the time to write the particulars about John Hall on the back of this photograph and date it. So I don't know who that person is. I suspect we'll never know who they are. But they, in doing that act, spending probably no more than a minute or two recording the information, they preserved his history. They preserved his face. And because of that, 160 years later, almost 160 years later, I'm able to tell you on a video about John Hall, the little that we know of him, his death of typhoid, and the fact that he did his part to preserve the country. So there you have it. Feels good even saying his name out loud. John Hall, 19th U.S. Infantry. We remember you. So that's it. That's today's story. We'll be back tomorrow with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Until then, take care.